never thought a pen could seal a fate. But when you're 22, broke, and watching your mother's heart monitor beep slower each day, you'll sign anything, even the devil's name, if it means she survives the night. The loan office didn't look like salvation. It was tucked between a pawn shop and a shuttered pharmacy, the kind of place that smelled like old carpet and desperation. The man behind the desk wore a suit too expensive for the neighborhood charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, with cufflinks that caught the fluorescent light, like little warnings I was too tired to read. "Miss Alvarez," he said, sliding a thick stack of papers across the scratched wood. "Your mother's surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Sign here, and the funds transfer immediately." My hand shook as I picked up the pen. It was heavy, silver, cold against my palm. "How much do I owe?" "Everything's outlined in the contract." His smile was polite, practiced. "Standard repayment terms. 5 years, manageable installments." I should have read it. Every page, every word. But my phone buzzed in my pocket, another text from the hospital about my mother's deteriorating condition, and the only number that mattered was the one that would keep her alive. "Once signed, it binds," he said as I scrawled my name across the final page. His tone was almost apologetic. "Legally and otherwise." I barely heard him. Relief flooded through me as he stamped the document with a heavy brass seal, the sound echoing in the small room like a judge's gavel. "Thank you," I whispered, clutching my copy of the papers. "Thank you so much." He handed me a business card blank except for a phone number embossed in gold. "If you have questions, call this number." "And Miss Alvarez?" He paused as I reached the door. "Read the exclusive clause. Page 47. But I was already running toward the hospital, my mother's name a prayer on my lips. The contract stuffed into my bag like any other. Paperwork. Just another bill to pay. Just another debt in a life built on them. 3 days later, my mother opened her eyes. The surgery was a success. Her color returned. Her smile, weak but real, made every sleepless night worth it. I held her hand in that sterile room and let myself believe the worst was over. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something instinct, maybe, or the memory of that loan officer's strange warning, made me swipe to accept. Silence. Then a single word appeared in a text message. Asterisk owned. Asterisk. My blood went cold. I blocked the number, told myself it was a prank, a scam, a wrong contact. But that night, I finally pulled out the contract and found page 47. The words blurred as I read them once, twice, 3 times, my heart hammering against my ribs. Asterisk, signatory, hereby transfers guardianship, consent, and personal claim to designated holder of debt instrument, effective upon execution. Release contingent upon mutual satisfaction of terms outlined in Addendum C, Moretti Clause. Asterisk. I didn't understand. I searched for Addendum C, but those pages were missing from my copy, replaced with a single stamped phrase, asterisk. See primary holder for details. Asterisk. I told myself it was meaningless legal jargon. Banks used complicated language to scare people. This was just another predatory loan. I'd figure it out. I'd fight it if I had to. But when I heard the knock on my apartment door the next evening, 3 slow, deliberate raps, I knew my time for denial was over. I checked the peephole. A man stood in the hallway, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a black suit that made the loan officers look cheap. His expression was unreadable, professional. Behind him, the hallway stretched empty, but I could feel the weight of something unseen pressing against my door. "Miss Alvarez." His voice was deep, courteous. "I'm here on behalf of Mr. Moretti. May I come in?" "I don't know any Moretti." My voice cracked. "You have the wrong apartment. I have the right signature." He held up a folder, and even through the peephole, I recognized the silver seal stamped on its cover. "Please, this will be easier if we speak calmly." My mother was asleep in the bedroom, still recovering. I couldn't risk a scene. Hands trembling, I unlocked the door but kept the chain latched. "What do you want?" He didn't push, just opened the folder and held up a document, my signature, my mother's name, and beneath it, a contract I'd never seen before. The words times personal transfer times and times binding agreement times jumped out at me like accusations. "The loan you signed wasn't for money," he said quietly. "It was a personal contract. Your mother's medical expenses were covered by Dante Moretti in exchange for a different kind of collateral." That's insane. That's illegal. It's older than the courts, Miss Alvarez, and your signature made it legitimate. He tucked the folder under his arm. Mr. Moretti requests your presence at his residence tomorrow at noon. The address is here. He slid a card under the door. If you don't come willingly, your mother's continued care will be reconsidered. The threat hung in the air like smoke. I wanted to scream, to call the police, to tear up that card. But my mother's insurance had been denied. The hospital bills had been astronomical. And somehow, impossibly, they'd all been paid in full the day after I signed. What does he want from me? I whispered. The man's expression softened, just slightly. That's between you and Mr. Moretti, but I suggest you don't keep him waiting. He left without another word. I stood frozen in my doorway, staring at the card in my hand. An address in the coastal hills, the kind of neighborhood I'd only seen in magazines, and a name embossed in black, * Dante Moretti, * I spent that night searching online. The name pulled up nothing, no social media, no public records, just whispers on obscure forums about a family that dealt in private acquisitions and legacy contracts. One post mentioned the Moretti name in connection with organized crime, but it was quickly deleted. I barely slept. When dawn broke, I called the hospital to check on my mother. The nurse's voice was cheerful. Oh, Miss Alvarez has been transferred to a private recovery suite. All expenses covered. Someone's taking very good care of her. The walls closed in. Whoever this Moretti was, he had reach, power, and he'd wrapped it around my mother like a golden chain. At 11:30, I stood outside my apartment building, clutching my bag, the address card worn from my nervous fingers. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb, no rideshare logo, no plates I could memorize. The driver, another man in black, opened the door without a word. I thought about running, but where would I go? My mother was under his control. My signature had seen to that. So I climbed into the car, and the door closed behind me with the soft, final click of a lock I couldn't see. The drive took 40 minutes, winding up through streets that grew quieter, wider, lined with gates and walls that hid estates from the world. The ocean appeared in glimpses between mansions, blue and endless and indifferent. I'd never been to this part of the city. It felt like another country. The car stopped in front of iron gates taller than any I'd ever seen. They opened silently, swinging inward to reveal a driveway lined with cypress trees. At the end of it sat a villa, pale stone, arched windows, balconies wrapped in climbing roses. It looked like something out of a European postcard. Beautiful, isolated, utterly inescapable. The driver opened my door. Mr. Moretti is waiting in the main hall. I forced my legs to move, to carry me up the stone steps and through the heavy wooden doors. Inside, the air smelled like leather and jasmine. The floors were marble, veined with gold. Artwork I didn't recognize lined the walls, originals, probably, worth more than I'd earn in a lifetime. And at the center of the hall, standing with his hands in his pockets, was Dante Moretti. He was younger than I expected, maybe 30, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from the same stone as his villa, sharp jawline, high cheekbones, eyes so dark they looked black in the filtered light. He wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, no tie, no jacket, casual, confident, like he'd been expecting me all along. Lena Alvarez. He said my name like he'd been practicing it. Thank you for coming. I didn't have a choice. My voice came out stronger than I felt. You always have a choice. He gestured toward a sitting area near the windows. Please, sit. I'll stand. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. Suit yourself. He walked to a sideboard and poured himself a drink, whiskey, amber and smooth. He didn't offer me one. I assume my associate explained the situation. He said I signed a contract. That I belong to you. The words tasted like poison. That's human trafficking. It's debt settlement. His tone was calm, almost gentle. Your mother's life was in my hands. I saved it. In return, you signed yourself into my care. Not ownership. Care. I didn't know what I was signing. Ignorance doesn't void a contract, Miss Alvarez, especially one witnessed and sealed. He took a slow sip, watching me over the rim of his glass. But I'm not unreasonable. I don't expect you to understand the terms immediately. That's why you're here. To learn. Learn what? I demanded. How to be your prisoner. To be protected. His voice hardened, just slightly. The world you came from doesn't follow the rules, you know. My world requires collateral, trust built on binding agreements. You signed into that world. And now, whether you like it or not, you're under my protection. I don't want your protection. I want out. He set down his glass and crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping close enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar, and smoke. His eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time, I saw the danger beneath the polish. You signed, he said softly. I protect what's mine. That's not negotiable. I turned toward the door, my pulse thundering in my ears. Then I'm leaving. No. The word was quiet, final. I spun back. You can't keep me here. I can, and I will. He nodded toward the entrance. But you're welcome to try. I ran. Down the hall, across the marble, my footsteps echoing like panic. I shoved open the front doors and stumbled onto the driveway, the sunlight blinding after the dim interior. The gates were right there, iron and tall, and beyond them freedom, the road, a way out. But as I reached them, they began to close, slowly, deliberately, the heavy metal sliding together with a sound like a thunderclap, cutting off the world beyond. I grabbed the bars and pulled, but they didn't budge. Electronic locks, cameras swiveling toward me from hidden corners, and behind me, I heard his footsteps on the gravel. I meant what I said, Lena. Dante's voice was closer now, calm and unyielding. You're not a prisoner, but you're not free to leave, not until you understand what your signature means. I turned, my back pressed against the cold iron. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets again, looking at me like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. How long? I whispered. As long as it takes. The gates locked behind me with a final echoing clang, and I realized, with a sinking certainty, that my life as I knew it had just ended. Dante didn't drag me back inside. He simply waited, letting the reality settle over me like a shroud, before gesturing toward the villa. Sophia will show you to your room. Dinner is at 7. I expect you to join me. And if I don't, then you'll go hungry. He turned and walked back inside, leaving me standing alone beneath the shadow of the gates. A woman appeared in the doorway, middle-aged, with kind eyes and a wary smile. Miss Alvarez? I'm Sophia. Please, come with me. I didn't have anywhere else to go. Sophia led me through hallways that seemed to stretch forever, each one more opulent than the last. She didn't speak, just walked with the practiced silence of someone who'd learned when to stay quiet. We climbed a curved staircase, past rooms with closed doors, and finally stopped in front of a suite that looked like it belonged in a 5-star hotel. This is yours, Sophia said, opening the door. Private bath, closet, balcony. If you need anything, there's a phone by the bed. Dial 9. I stepped inside. The room was beautiful. High ceilings, a 4-poster bed draped in silk, French doors opening onto a terrace overlooking the gardens. It should have felt like luxury. Instead, it felt like a cage lined with velvet. Why does he want me here? I asked, my voice hollow. Sophia hesitated, her hand on the doorknob. Mr. Moretti, he doesn't bring women here. Ever. Whatever you signed, it means something to him. She paused. Don't wander the West Wing, and don't go into the greenhouse after dark. Why not? Because some doors are locked for a reason. She closed the door softly, and I heard her footsteps fade down the hall. I collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together how my life had unraveled so quickly. A week ago, I was a nursing student juggling shifts and student loans. Now I was trapped in a mansion by a man who spoke about ownership like it was a gift. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? That I'd signed a contract I didn't read? That a man was keeping me in luxury against my will? They'd laugh me out of the station, or worse, they'd investigate and find out Dante Moretti was someone you didn't cross. So I lay there, frozen between fear and fury, until the light outside shifted to gold and a soft knock sounded at my door. Miss Alvarez? Sophia's voice. Dinner in 30 minutes. I didn't answer. But when the time came, I forced myself to stand, to smooth my clothes, to walk down those stairs with my head high. If I was going to survive this, I needed to understand him. And the only way to do that was to play along for now. The dining room was absurd. A table long enough to seat 20, set for 2. Candles flickered in silver holders. Dante sat at the head, already eating, a book open beside his plate. He looked up as I entered and gestured to the seat across from him. "I'm glad you came." "I didn't have a choice," I repeated. "You always have a choice. You chose to come down. You chose not to throw the dishes at me." He smiled faintly. "That's progress." I sat, stiff and silent, as Sophia placed a plate in front of me. The food smelled incredible: roasted vegetables, tender meat, bread still warm from the oven. My stomach betrayed me with a growl. "Eat," Dante said. "You'll need your strength." "For what?" "For adjusting." He set down his fork and studied me. "Tell me about yourself, Lena. What were you studying before all this? Why do you care?" "Because I prefer to know the people in my care. I'm not in your care. I'm your hostage." Semantics. He leaned back, swirling the wine in his glass. "Nursing, wasn't it? You wanted to save people." The fact that he knew made my skin crawl. "You've been watching me." "I've been careful." "There's a difference." He took a sip. "You're strong, smarter than you think. That's why you're here." "I don't understand." "You will." He raised his glass toward me, to what's already mine. I didn't touch my glass. The words hung in the air, a toast and a threat wrapped in silk. He didn't seem offended by my refusal, just set his glass down and returned to his meal, as if my defiance was expected. We ate in silence, the tension thick enough to choke on. Every time I glanced up, I found him watching me not with hunger or cruelty, but with something unsettlingly close to curiosity, like I was a book he intended to read cover to cover. When the meal ended, he stood and offered his hand. "Walk with me." No, it wasn't a request, but his tone lacked the edge from earlier. He sounded almost hopeful. Against my better judgment, I followed him through the glass doors and into the gardens. The night air was cool, laced with the scent of roses and salt from the distant sea. Lanterns lit the pathways, casting golden pools on the stone. We walked in silence, past fountains and hedges sculpted into perfect geometry, until we reached a structure at the garden's heart, a greenhouse, its glass panels fogged with humidity. Dante unlocked the door and stepped inside. I hesitated, remembering Sophia's warning, but curiosity won. I followed. Inside, the air was thick and warm, heavy with the scent of earth and blooms. Rows of roses filled the space, every color imaginable, some varieties I'd never seen. They climbed trellises, spilled from hanging pots, their petals perfect and untouchable. "Beautiful, aren't they?" Dante's voice was soft, almost reverent. "Why keep them locked up?" I asked. "Because beauty is fragile. It needs protection." He brushed his fingers over a crimson bloom. "Control." I understood the metaphor. "Is that what I am to you? A flower in a cage?" He turned to face me, his expression unreadable. "You're more than that. But yes, right now, you need protecting. From yourself, if nothing else. I don't need. You signed yourself into a world you don't understand, Lena. There are people who would use you to hurt me. People who would kill you just to make a point." His jaw tightened. "So yes, you'll stay here. You'll learn the rules. And you'll understand why I don't let things I value out of my sight." The intensity in his voice made my breath catch. For the first time, I saw past the control, past the power, and glimpsed something raw beneath. "I didn't ask for this." I whispered. "I know." He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "But you're here, and I don't break my promises. I'll keep you safe, Lena. Even if you hate me for it." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor shifted, tension flooding back into his shoulders. "Go back to your room," he said curtly. "Now." "What's wrong?" "Now, Lena." The command in his voice left no room for argument. I hurried back through the gardens, my heart pounding, and didn't stop until I was behind the locked door of my suite. Through the window, I saw figures moving in the shadows near the greenhouse, men in dark clothes, speaking in low, urgent tones. Whatever world I'd signed into, it was darker than I'd imagined, and I was trapped right in the center of it. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound made me jump: footsteps in the hall, the distant rumble of cars, the wind rattling the balcony doors. I kept replaying Dante's words. Asterisk. People who would kill you just to make a point. Asterisk. What had I stumbled into? Morning came with a knock. Sophia entered with a breakfast tray and a nervous smile. Mr. Moretti is attending to business today. You're free to explore the main house. Just avoid the West Wing." "Why?" I asked again. She set the tray down carefully. "Because that's where he keeps the things he doesn't want seen." The moment she left, I made a decision. If I was going to survive here, I needed information. I needed to know who Dante Moretti was and what my signature had really bound me to. So I ate quickly, dressed, and slipped into the hallway. The mansion was a labyrinth. I wandered through sitting rooms filled with antique furniture, libraries with shelves reaching to vaulted ceilings, a music room with a grand piano draped in dust covers. Everything was beautiful and cold, like a museum where no one actually lived. I found the West Wing by accident, or maybe by instinct. A hallway that felt different, darker, the doors heavier, a sign in Italian I didn't understand, and at the end, a room with the door slightly ajar. I should have turned back. Instead, I pushed it open. Inside was an office, sparse, functional, a desk covered in ledgers and files, a laptop, locked, and on the shelves, binders labeled with names and dates, organized with obsessive precision. I pulled one down. Inside were contracts, photographs, financial records, names I didn't recognize next to sums of money that made my head spin. And in the margins, initials, asterisk, M, A, asterisk, asterisk, D, R, asterisk, asterisk, L, A, asterisk, my initials. I flipped to my section with shaking hands. There was my signature, the date I'd signed, my mother's medical records, and beneath it all a notation in Dante's handwriting. Asterisk high value. Personal interest. Retain indefinitely. Asterisk personal interest. The words made my stomach turn. "You shouldn't be here." I spun. Dante stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Not angry, not surprised, just watching. "What is this?" I demanded, holding up the binder. "Am I just another name in your collection? Another debt you own?" He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "It's more complicated than that." "Then explain it to me." "Sit down." "No, Lena." His voice was firm but not cruel. "Sit, please." I sank into the chair behind his desk, clutching the binder like a shield. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, and for a long moment, he just looked at me. "My family deals in debts," he said finally. "Not money, people. Favors, loyalties. It's how we've survived for generations. When someone can't pay, we take collateral. Usually it's labor, information, access. Sometimes," he trailed off. "Sometimes it's more. Like me. Like you." He pushed off the door and crossed to the window. "But you're different. You were supposed to be a simple transaction. A girl who signed without knowing, easy to manage, easy to release when the terms were met. But then I saw your file. Your history. The way you fought for your mother. The way you didn't break, even when you should have. So you decided to keep me? I decided you were worth protecting." He turned to face me. "Do you know what would happen if the families found out I'd acquired someone like you? Someone with no ties to this world, no protection, no one to avenge her if she disappeared? My blood went cold. They'd come for me. They'd tear you apart to hurt me. That's how this works." His voice was low, almost gentle. "So yes, Lena, you're in my ledger. You're marked as mine, because that's the only thing keeping you alive." I stared at him, trying to process the twisted logic. "I didn't ask for any of this." "I know." He stepped closer, crouching so we were eye level. "But you're here, and I will keep you safe, even if you hate me, even if you never understand why." His eyes held mine, dark and intense, and for the first time, I saw the weight he carried, the burden of a world built on control and violence and ruthless, brutal care. "I want to see my mother," I whispered. "Not yet." "When?" "When I'm sure you won't run." He stood, offering his hand. "Come, there's something I want to show you." I didn't take his hand, but I followed him out of the office, through the West Wing, and up a narrow staircase I hadn't noticed before. At the top was a single door. He unlocked it and stepped aside. "Go ahead." I walked into a room that took my breath away. Walls covered in maps, old ones, new ones, some hand-drawn, a desk piled with books, papers, photographs, and on the far wall, a portrait of a woman with dark hair and sad eyes. "My mother," Dante said quietly. She died when I was 12. I turned to look at him. His face was carefully blank, but his hands were clenched at his sides. She signed a contract too, he continued, to protect me and my father. But the people she signed with didn't honor it. They took everything her freedom, her life, her choice. My father spent the next 10 years hunting them down, and when he was done, he taught me one rule. Never let the people you protect become leverage. That's why you keep me here. That's why I can't let you go. He met my eyes. Because I won't let what happened to her happen to you. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I saw him differently now, not just as my captor, but as someone haunted by a loss he couldn't undo. Someone trying, in his own twisted way, to save me from a fate he knew too well. "I'm not your mother," I said softly. "No, you're not." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "But you're mine to protect now, and I don't break that vow." Thunder rumbled outside, low and distant. The light through the window turned gray, and I felt the storm coming before the first drops of rain hit the glass. "Stay here," Dante said. "I'll have Sophia bring you dinner." But as he turned to leave, the lights flickered, and somewhere below, an alarm began to wail. Dante's entire body went rigid. He pulled a phone from his pocket, barked something in Italian, and turned to me with an expression I hadn't seen before: fear. "Come with me. Now." "What's happening?" "Someone's breached the perimeter." He grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward the stairs. "Stay close and do exactly what I say." We ran through the mansion, the alarm shrieking, shadows moving in the gardens below. Dante's men appeared from nowhere, armed, coordinated, forming a perimeter. He shoved me toward Sophia, who appeared in the hallway like a ghost. "Take her to the safe room," he ordered. "No," I said. "Tell me what's—" The greenhouse exploded. The sound was deafening, glass shattering outward in a glittering wave. Flames erupted from the structure, orange and furious, eating through the roses and wood like they were made of paper. Gunfire cracked through the chaos, sharp, precise, terrifyingly close. Dante pushed me behind him, shielding me, and with his body. "Get her out of here." But I couldn't move. Through the smoke and flame, I saw the men in black, faces covered, moving through the garden like predators. One of them raised a gun, aiming directly at Dante. I didn't think. I just moved. I threw myself forward, colliding with Dante's side just as the shot fired. The bullet whizzed past us. So close I felt the heat. We hit the ground together, his weight crushing, his breath ragged in my ear. "Are you insane?" he hissed. "You were going to die." More gunfire, more shouting. His men returned fire, and the attackers scattered into the smoke. Dante hauled me to my feet, his hand iron-tight around my wrist, and dragged me through a side door into the mansion's depths. We ended up in a narrow corridor, stone walls, low ceiling, lit by emergency lights. He finally stopped, breathing hard, and turned to me with fury and something else blazing in his eyes. "Why did you do that?" "I don't know." My voice cracked. I couldn't watch you." He kissed me. Not gently, not carefully. A kiss born of adrenaline and fear and something raw that had been building since the moment we met. His hands cupped my face, his mouth demanding and desperate, and for one wild second, I kissed him back. Then reality crashed in, and I shoved him away. "Don't," I gasped. He stared at me, chest heaving, eyes wild. "You saved my life." "I don't know why." "I do." He stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "You're not just collateral anymore, Lena. You're in this, whether you want to be or not." A door burst open above us, and one of his men shouted down, "Boss, they're gone." "But we found something." Dante's jaw tightened. "Stay here." Like hell. He looked at me, really looked, and something in his expression shifted. "Fine, but stay behind me." We climbed back into the main house. The greenhouse was a smoking ruin, the garden scorched and trampled. His men stood in a circle near the wreckage, and when we approached, they parted to reveal what they'd found. A photograph, burned at the edges but still clear. My face, circled in red. "They weren't here for you," one of the men said quietly. "They were here for her." Dante took the photo, his knuckles white. "Get every camera, every access point. I want to know who sent them and how they knew she was here." "Boss, now." The men scattered. Dante stood there, staring at my image, and when he finally looked at me, his expression was cold and controlled, but his eyes betrayed him. "You're not safe anymore. he said. Not even here. What does that mean? It means they know about you, and if they're willing to attack my home to get to you, they'll try again. He pocketed the photo. From now on, you don't leave my sight. I wanted to argue, but the truth was undeniable. The moment I'd stepped into Dante's world, I'd been marked. And now, the only thing standing between me and whoever wanted me dead was the man I'd sworn to hate. Why me? I whispered. Why do they want me? Because you're leverage. Because hurting you hurts me. His voice was rough. And because in this world, Lena, caring about someone is the most dangerous thing you can do. The rain began to fall in earnest, washing the smoke from the air but not the fear from my bones. Dante turned and walked back toward the mansion, and I followed, my shadow stretching long behind me in the floodlights. I'd signed my name on a contract I didn't understand, but somewhere between the signature and the flames, I'd become something else entirely. A target, a pawn, and maybe terrifyingly something he couldn't afford to lose. They moved me that night, not to a safe room, but to Dante's private suite, a wing of the mansion I hadn't even known existed. His men swept the corridors, posted guards at every entrance, and installed additional locks on doors that already looked impenetrable. I sat on the edge of a leather sofa, wrapped in a blanket someone had draped over my shoulders, watching the controlled chaos with numb detachment. Dante stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian. Every few sentences, his eyes would flick toward me, then away, like he was reassuring himself I was still there. When he finally hung up, the room fell silent except for the crackle of the fireplace. They were professionals, he said, pouring himself a drink. Well-funded, well-informed. Someone paid a lot of money to send a message. What message? That you're exposed, that I can be hurt. He downed the whiskey in one swallow. That I made a mistake bringing you here. Then let me go. It's too late for that. He set the glass down with controlled precision. If I release you now, they'll find you in a week, maybe less, and they won't be as courteous as I've been. I laughed bitterly. Courteous. You call this courteous? Compared to what they'd do? Yes. He crossed the room and crouched in front of me, his eyes level with mine. You're alive, Lena. You're fed, you're sheltered, and you're under the protection of one of the most powerful families in this region. That's more than most people in your situation can say. I didn't want this situation. Neither did I. His voice cracked, just slightly. Do you think I wanted to care about someone who could be used against me? Do you think I planned to? He stopped himself, jaw clenching. You were supposed to be easy. A contract fulfilled, a debt cleared, a life saved and forgotten. But you, he shook his head. You're stubborn and reckless, and you threw yourself in front of a bullet for me tonight. So no, Lena, I can't let you go. Because if I do, I'll spend every night wondering if you're still alive. The confession hung between us, raw and unguarded. I stared at him, this man who'd stolen my freedom, and saw the cracks in his armor, the exhaustion, the fear, the burden of a world built on violence and control. I hate you, I whispered. I know, but I don't want you dead. I know that too. He stood, his hand brushing my shoulder, brief, almost tender. Get some rest. You'll stay here tonight. I'll be down the hall if you need anything. Where are you going? To make sure the people who came for you never make it close again. He walked to the door, paused, and looked back. You saved my life tonight, Lena. I don't forget debts, especially ones I owe. Then he was gone, and I was alone in a room that smelled like cedar and smoke, and the weight of secrets I still didn't understand. I should have tried to sleep. Instead, I explored. Dante's suite was nothing like the rest of the mansion. Where the other rooms were cold and formal, this space felt lived-in, books stacked on tables, maps pinned to walls, a desk covered in papers and half-finished coffee cups. It was the room of someone who never stopped working, never stopped planning. I found a photo tucked into the corner of a mirror. Dante, younger, smiling next to a woman who had to be his mother. Her hand rested on his shoulder, her expression warm despite the sadness in her eyes. On the back, someone had written in faded ink, asterisk, protect what matters. Nothing else is real. Asterisk, I set it down carefully, my throat tight. In the closet, I found clothes that had been brought from my apartment, my own shirts, jeans, even the ratty hoodie I'd worn the day I signed the contract. Someone had been in my home, packed my things, erased my presence from the world I knew. The realization should have terrified me. Instead, it just made me tired. I changed into my own clothes, curled up on the sofa, and let the firelight lull me into an uneasy sleep. I woke to voices. Low, urgent, coming from the hallway outside. I sat up, disoriented, and checked the clock on the mantel. 3 a.m. Quietly, I crossed to the door and pressed my ear against the wood. Confirmed. Santos family. A man's voice. One of Dante's guards. They're claiming she's collateral for an old debt. Moretti Sr.'s generation. That's impossible. Dante's voice, sharp with anger. My father cleared all Santos contracts before he died. Apparently not all of them. They're saying the girl's mother signed something 20 years ago. Hospital bill. Moretti family fronted the money, but the debt was never settled. My heart stopped. So Lena's contract is double-bound, Dante said slowly. To me and to them. If Santos can prove it, they have legal claim. Old law. First signature takes precedence. Silence. Then Dante's voice, cold and lethal. They're not taking her. Boss, if they have documentation. I don't care. Find me every record from that period. I want proof the debt was cleared. Or I want leverage to make them forget it existed. And if we can't, then we go to war. Footsteps receded. I stumbled back from the door, my mind reeling. My mother had signed something, 20 years ago, before I was even born, and now another family Santos was claiming I belonged to them? The door opened. Dante stepped inside, saw me standing there, and his expression darkened. You heard. Is it true? My voice shook. Did my mother? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. He closed the door behind him. If Santos has a legitimate claim, this gets complicated. But I'm not giving you up, Lena. Not to them. Not to anyone. Why? I demanded. Why does it matter so much? I'm just a name in your ledger. You stopped being just a name the moment you risked your life for mine. He crossed the room in 2 strides, gripping my shoulders. Do you understand what that meant? In my world, loyalty is bought. Trust is negotiated. No one sacrifices themselves without a reason. But you did, without thinking, without hesitation. And that, he exhaled shakily, that changes everything. I stared up at him, at the intensity burning in his eyes, and felt something shift inside, me a dangerous crack in the wall I'd built to keep him out. I don't know what you want from me, I whispered. I want you safe. I want you here. He released me, stepping back as if he'd said too much. Get some rest. Tomorrow I'm taking you to see your mother. You deserve answers. And so do I. He left before I could respond, the door clicking shut behind him. I stood alone in his space, surrounded by the pieces of his life, and realized with sinking certainty that I was no longer sure if I wanted to escape, or if I even could. Morning came too quickly. Sophia woke me with coffee and a quiet warning. Don't upset Mr. Moretti today. He didn't sleep. I found him in the foyer, dressed in a dark suit, his expression unreadable. A car waited outside, engine running. Ready? He asked. I nodded, and we drove in silence toward the hospital. The visit was supposed to give me clarity. Instead, it shattered me. My mother looked better, healthier, color in her cheeks, her smile bright when she saw me. We hugged, and she stroked my hair like I was a child again. I've been so worried about you, she whispered, but they told me you're being taken care of. Mom, I pulled back. Did you ever sign anything? Years ago? For medical bills? Her smile faltered. What? A contract. With a family called Moretti. Or Santos. Her face went pale. How do you know about that? My stomach dropped. So it's true. She glanced toward the door, where Dante waited in the hallway, and lowered her voice. When you were born, there were complications. I almost died. We had no insurance, no money. A man came to the hospital and offered to cover everything. All I had to do was sign. What did you sign, Mom? I don't know. I was barely conscious. But he said the debt would be cleared when I could repay it. I never heard from them again, so I thought. She gripped my hands. Oh God, Lena. Did they come for you because of me? It's okay, I lied. I'm going to be okay. But as I left her room, I felt the trap closing tighter. My mother's desperation had set this in motion decades ago, and now I was paying the price. Dante was waiting by the elevator, his jaw tight, Your mother confirmed it. She didn't know what she was signing. Neither did you. And yet here we are. He pressed the button, and the doors slid open. Come on. We're not finished. Where are we going? To the one person who might have answers. He drove us to a part of the city I didn't recognize. Old warehouses, graffiti-tagged walls, the smell of rust and decay. We stopped in front of a building with blacked-out windows and 2 men flanking the entrance. Stay close, Dante said. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and tension. Men in expensive suits played cards at corner tables, their eyes tracking us as we passed. Dante led me to a back office where an older man sat behind a battered desk, counting cash with gnarled fingers. Dante Moretti, the man said without looking up. To what do I owe the displeasure? I need to know about a Santos contract from 20 years ago. Hospital debt, signed by a woman named Elena Alvarez. The man finally looked up, his eyes sharp despite his age. That's old business. Is it still active? A long pause. Depends who's asking. I am. Dante's voice was ice. The daughter signed into my care last week. If Santos has a prior claim, I need to know. The old man leaned back, studying us both. The girl? She's under my protection. And if Santos says she's theirs, then we have a problem. The man smiled, cold and calculating. You're willing to start a war over one girl? If I have to. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken threat. Then the man pulled out a ledger, flipped through pages, and tapped a line of faded ink. Santos never formalized the claim. The mother signed, but they never registered it with the families. Technically, it's void. Relief flooded through me. But Dante's expression didn't change. Technically, he repeated. Technically. But Santos might not see it that way, especially if they hear you've taken an interest in the girl. The old man's smile widened. Sounds like you've got yourself a mess, Moretti. Dante slid an envelope across the desk. Then help me clean it up. The man pocketed it without counting. I'll make some calls. But if Santos pushes back, you're on your own. Understood. We left the same way we came, past the watchful eyes and into the car. Dante didn't speak until we were back on the highway. You're clear, he said quietly. Legally, you're mine. I'm not yours, I shot back. I'm not anyone's. You're safer with me than without me. Santos won't let this go just because the paperwork's messy. If they think they can use you, they will. Then what do I do? He glanced at me, something raw flickering in his eyes. You stay close. You trust me. And you stop looking at me like I'm the villain in your story. Then what are you? I don't know yet, he admitted. But I'm trying to be better than the world I was born into, even if it doesn't look like it. The honesty disarmed me. I turned to the window, watching the city blur past, and wondered when I'd stopped seeing him as my captor and started seeing him as something more complicated. Dangerous, yes, but also strangely, fiercely protective. We returned to the mansion as the sun set. Dante escorted me to his suite, checked the locks himself, and paused at the door. I'll be working late, he said. If you need anything, I know, dial 9. I managed a small smile. Thank you. For today. He blinked, surprised. You're thanking me? You didn't have to take me to see her, or find answers about my mom's contract. You could have just kept me in the dark. I could have, he agreed. But you deserve better than that. He left, and I was alone again. The walls of my gilded cage feeling just a little less suffocating. I spent the evening reading in front of the fire, trying to ignore the unease settling in my chest. Dante had said I was clear, but something about the old man's smile, the way he'd said Santos might not see it that way, made me think this wasn't over. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Asterisk. Your mother is in danger. Meet me at the north parking garage, level 3. Come alone, or she dies. Asterisk. My blood turned to ice. I stared at the message, hands shaking. It could be a trap. It probably was a trap. But if there was even a chance my mother was in danger, I couldn't tell Dante. He'd lock me down, send his men, and if these people were serious, they'd hurt her before he could intervene. So I did the stupidest, most reckless thing I'd done since signing that contract. I slipped out of the suite, past the guards who thought I was asleep, and into the night. The parking garage was 15 minutes away by cab. I paid in cash, kept my hood up, and tried to ignore the voice in my head screaming that this was a mistake. Level 3 was deserted, lit by flickering fluorescents that buzzed like dying insects. I walked slowly, every nerve on edge, until a voice echoed from the shadows. Lena Alvarez. A man stepped into the light mid-40s, expensive suit, cold smile. Behind him, 2 others emerged, blocking the exits. "Who are you?" I demanded. "Emilio Santos. Your mother's debt belongs to my family, which means you do too." "The debt was never formalized. It's void." "Void?" He laughed. "You think paperwork matters in our world? Your mother signed her life to us, and when she couldn't pay, the debt transferred to you. I'm under Moretti protection. Not anymore." He gestured, and one of his men held up a phone. On the screen, grainy footage of my mother in her hospital room. "One call, and she has an unfortunate accident, unless you come quietly." I felt the trap snap shut. "What do you want?" "Information. Moretti's. Accounts. His contacts. His vulnerabilities. You're close to him now. You'll get what I need." "I don't know anything." "Then learn." He stepped closer, his smile sharpening. "Or watch her die. Your choice." I thought of Dante, of the way he'd looked at me when I'd shielded him from the bullet, of the contract he'd burned to set me free from paper, if not from danger, of the trust I'd barely begun to build. And I thought of my mother, smiling in her hospital bed, unaware that my choices were about to destroy everything. "I'll do it," I whispered. Santos's smile widened. "Smart girl. We'll be in touch." They left me there, alone in the cold garage, the weight of betrayal settling over my shoulders like a cloak. I returned to the mansion before dawn, slipping back into the suite unnoticed, but when I closed the door, I found Dante sitting in the dark, waiting. "Where were you?" His voice was quiet, dangerous. "I couldn't sleep. I went for a walk. In the middle of the night, past armed guards, without telling anyone." He stood, and even in the dim light, I could see the fury in his eyes. "Do you have any idea what could have happened to you?" "I'm fine. You're lying." He crossed the room in 2 strides, gripping my arms. "What happened, Lena?" I wanted to tell him. Every instinct screamed to confess, to let him protect me the way he'd promised. But the image of my mother on that screen, helpless and unaware, silenced me. "Nothing happened," I said. "I just needed air." He stared at me for a long moment, searching my face, and I saw the exact second he stopped believing me. "You're going to get yourself killed," he said quietly, "and there's nothing I can do to stop you." He released me and walked to the door. "From now on, you don't leave this suite without me. Not for air. Not for anything. Understand?" I nodded, unable to speak. He left, and I collapsed onto the sofa, burying my face in my hands. I'd made my choice, and it was going to destroy us both. Over the next 3 days, I became a ghost in Dante's house. I smiled when expected, nodded when spoken to, and spent every waking moment sick with guilt. Santos contacted me twice, once through a burner phone left in my bathroom, once through a note tucked into my jacket pocket. Each time the message was the same. Asterisk. Find the files. Or she dies. Asterisk. I didn't know what files they wanted. Dante's office was locked, his computer encrypted, his papers coded in languages I didn't speak. But I had access, proximity, and the one thing Santos was counting on: Dante's trust. On the 4th night, I made my move. Dante was in a late meeting, the house quiet except for the distant murmur of guards. I slipped into his office using the code Sophia had accidentally mentioned, my heart hammering so loud I was sure someone would hear. Inside, the room felt sacred. This was where he worked, where he planned, where he kept the secrets that held his world together. And I was about to violate it. I found the files in the 3rd drawer: contracts, contacts, financial records. I didn't understand half of what I was reading, but I photographed everything, my hands shaking so badly the images blurred. I was uploading the last photo when I heard footsteps in the hall. Panic flooded me. I shoved the files back, closed the drawer, and dove behind the desk just as the door opened. Sophia. She stepped inside, carrying a tray of coffee, and froze when she saw the desk chair pulled out, the papers slightly askew. Her eyes found mine in the shadows. "Miss Alvarez," she said softly. "What are you doing?" "Please," I whispered. "Don't tell him." She stared at me for a long, terrible moment. Then she set down the tray, straightened the papers, and walked to the door. "I didn't see you," she said quietly. "But you're making a mistake." She left, and I stayed frozen behind the desk, tears streaming down my face. By the time I returned to the suite, the photos were sent. Santos replied instantly. Asterisk. Good girl. One more task, and your mother is safe. Asterisk. But I knew the truth. There would always be one more task, one more demand, one more betrayal, until there was nothing left of me to give. I was still sitting in the dark when Dante returned, hours later. He didn't turn on the lights, just sank into the chair across from me, exhausted and drained. "I'm losing control," he said quietly. "Santos is pushing boundaries. My own men are questioning my decisions, and I can't figure out how they're getting information from inside my house." The confession was a knife to my chest. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "For what?" "In the cistern. For everything. For the photos on my phone, for the trust I'd shattered, for the choice I'd made in that parking garage. But I couldn't say it. Not yet. For being a burden." He looked at me, his expression soft despite his exhaustion. "You're not a burden, Lena. You're the only thing in this mess that feels real." He stood and walked to me, cupping my face with gentle hands. "Whatever's happening, we'll face it together. You and me, okay?" I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. He kissed my forehead tender, achingly kind, and left me alone with my guilt. The next morning, Santos sent his final demand. Asterisk, deliver the access codes to Moretti's offshore accounts, or your mother dies tonight. Asterisk, I stared at the message until the words blurred. I couldn't do it. Not this. Not the one thing that would destroy Dante completely. But I couldn't let my mother die. So I made a plan. Stupid, reckless, desperate, but it was all I had. I would go to Santos, tell him I couldn't get the codes, and offer myself instead. Full compliance, full cooperation, whatever he wanted. As long as my mother stayed safe. I left a note for Dante on his desk. Simple, short, asterisk, I'm sorry. This was the only way. Asterisk. Then I walked out of the mansion for what I was sure would be the last time. Santos had told me to meet him at the docks. The same place where shipments came and went, where deals were made in the language of violence and money. I arrived at midnight, alone, and found him waiting with a dozen men. "Where are the codes?" he demanded. "I don't have them." His smile vanished. "Then you're useless. Take me instead. I'll work for you. I'll do whatever you want. Just leave my mother out of this." He laughed. "You think I want you? You're not leverage anymore, girl. You're a liability." He gestured to his men. "Kill her." I didn't run, didn't scream, just closed my eyes and waited for the shot. It never came. Gunfire erupted, but not at me. From the shadows, Dante's men poured in, a coordinated strike that turned the dock into chaos. Santos's crew scattered, and in the smoke and confusion, I saw him. Dante, moving through the battlefield like a force of nature, his gun raised, his expression cold and lethal. He reached me in seconds, grabbing my arm. "Are you hurt?" "How did you?" Sophia told me everything. His eyes were hard, but his grip was gentle. "Did you really think I'd let you walk into this alone? My mother is safe. I moved her to a secure facility an hour ago." He pulled me behind cover as bullets ricocheted off metal containers. "You should have trusted me, Lena. I couldn't risk it. And I can't risk you." He fired twice, dropping a man who'd gotten too close. "Do you understand what you mean to me? Do you have any idea what I would have done if I'd lost you tonight?" His words cut through the chaos, raw and desperate. I stared at him, this man I'd feared and hated and somehow, impossibly, started to care for. "I was trying to protect you," I whispered. "That's my job." He cupped my face, his thumb brushing my cheek. "Not yours. Mine." A shout from behind us. Santos, bloodied and furious, raising his gun at Dante's back. I moved without thinking, shoving Dante aside. The bullet tore through my shoulder, white-hot pain exploding through me, and I hit the ground hard. Dante roared my name. I heard more gunfire, screams, the wet thud of bodies hitting concrete. Then his hands were on me, lifting me, his voice breaking as he said my name over and over. "Stay with me, Lena. Stay with me." I blinked up at him through the haze of pain and smoke. "I signed," I whispered. "But now, I'm choosing you." his expression shattered. You stubborn, reckless. He pressed his hand to my shoulder, trying to stop the bleeding. I'm getting you out of here. Did we win? We will. He lifted me into his arms, cradling me against his chest as his men secured the area. We will. The world tilted, darkened, and I let myself fall into the safety of his hold, trusting him to catch me. Because for the first time since I'd signed that contract, I wasn't afraid. I woke to sunlight, soft sheets, the distant sound of waves. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed it all, the mansion, the danger, the man who'd claimed me with a signature and kept me with something far more complicated. Then I felt the bandage on my shoulder and knew it was real. You're awake. I turned my head. Dante sat beside the bed, unshaven and exhausted, his hand resting near mine on the blanket. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. How long? I asked. 2 days. You lost a lot of blood. His voice was rough. The doctors said you'd be fine, but He trailed off, his jaw tight. I didn't believe them until you opened your eyes. I reached for his hand, lacing our fingers together. My mother? Safe, hidden. Santos won't find her. And Santos? Dead. No emotion in his voice, just fact. His family won't retaliate. The evidence I gave the council proved he'd been breaking treaties for years. You're free, Lena. Legally and otherwise. I stared at him. Free? From Santos, from the contract, from me, if you want. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, the contract I'd signed, burned at the past. Edges. I destroyed it. Your debt is cleared. I took the paper, feeling its weight, its finality. The signature that had bound me was nothing but ash. So I can leave, I said slowly. Yes. And if I don't want to? His eyes snapped to mine, hope and disbelief warring in their depths. Then you stay, not because of a contract, not because of debt, but because you choose to. I set the paper aside and pulled him closer, ignoring the ache in my shoulder. I choose you, Dante, not the contract, not the protection. You. He kissed me then, soft and desperate and full of everything we'd been too afraid to say. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. I don't deserve you. Probably not. I agreed, smiling through tears. But you're stuck with me anyway. He laughed, the sound broken and relieved, and held me like he'd never let go. Outside, the sun climbed higher, painting the room in gold. Through the window, I could see the gardens, the greenhouse rebuilt, roses blooming wild and free, no longer locked behind glass. What happens now? I asked. Now? He brushed a strand of hair from my face. Now we figure it out, together. No more secrets? No more secrets, he promised. And next time you need to sign something? He pulled a silver pen from his pocket, the same one I'd used to seal my fate. You sign as my equal. I took the pen, feeling its familiar weight, and smiled. Deal. He kissed my hand, my wrist, the inside of my elbow, each one a vow, a promise written in touch instead of ink. The contract that had bound me was ash, but the choice I'd made, the man I'd chosen, the life we'd build from the ruins of debt and danger that was real. And for the first time since I'd walked into that loan office, desperate and afraid, I felt something I'd thought I'd lost forever. Freedom, not from him, with him, and that made all the difference.